Hi, this is Eric from Cafe Watercolor and welcome to another painting video. So this week I am going to share with you the process of this painting that I did. And it's actually been a while since I just do a painting and just enjoying fully while listening to music without talking over it, because most of the time when I'm doing a painting, I'm also doing live demo. So talking, teaching, and painting at the same time definitely feel very different. And while I do enjoy doing live demo, it just feels very different and relaxing, extra relaxing when I am doing a painting and just listening to music without the need of talking, so I don't have to put my thought into words and having something processing here while I'm painting. Sometimes when I'm doing live demo, especially a portrait live demo, it can be quite stressful because I don't know if it's gonna turn out good or not. So this one I'm pretty happy with. So like the video before, I want to share with you the subject, talk a little bit about it, and then share with you the painting process. So here we go. So this beautiful person is Julia. I met her through Instagram. Never see her in person, so we just kind of talk a little bit on Instagram, and I asked if I can paint this photo. This is actually part of a video that she shot herself, and I just take the shot because I just really like the soft looking lighting and her confident smile, and I just really want to paint it, and all the color looks very, very pleasing. So she said yes, she's actually very excited about it. So whenever I pick a portrait painting subject for watercolor, I usually like to have a very soft, natural lighting. So I think this really fits my criteria, because a very strong contrast lighting, for me, it doesn't always look that good in watercolor. I mean, some artists done it very, very well, but I just feel like it's very easy to get the painting look too harsh and the contrast a little bit too much for watercolor. When it comes to watercolor, I like to keep most of the things a little bit more transparent. So even though this is like a very soft lighting, a very lack of contrast, you can still see a good amount of shadow shape between like the nose and like a very soft cast shadow casting on her cheek, and you can still kind of make out of her eye socket the shadow or like the ambient occlusion of the eye socket, so that you can actually still read the structure quite well. And of course, she got very, very nice structure, so it makes things easier as well. And I really, really love just like her eyes. It's just really nice, clear, and beautiful. Got this soft blue color. Really, really like that. So I definitely want to paint that in. So this is our model, and I'm going to share with you the process of the portrait painting. So we'll start the painting with a solid line drawing. Now when it comes to portrait, drawing is very important. If you're drawing scenery, you can get away with things looking a little bit off. A tree a little bit taller or a building a little bit shorter, that's fine. But if you are drawing a human being, you are drawing a portrait, you want to make sure that it looks believable. And especially if you want to capture the likeness of the person, you need to spend extra time trying to get it as close as you can. Now, I'm not a natural when it comes to capturing the likeness, so I do need to spend a little bit extra time on this. So I'm using a dull 4B pencil trying to get the basic structure down. And I'm drawing very lightly on it without committing. In case if I made a mistake, I want to adjust or correct anything, I can very easily erase the pencil lines. Now, fortunately, she has a wonderful facial structure that's actually very strong, so I can very easily see the structure underneath her face. That makes my job a little bit easier. So now I switched to a mechanical pencil. It has thinner lines, and it is 4B lead, so I don't need to press down hard on the paper, because that will dent the paper and actually damage the paper. So 4B lead is the way to go, makes things a lot easier for me. So here I'm not actually redrawing the whole portrait. I'm not trying to make an outline. I am just trying to make some marks, some indication for the landmarks on the face. So the eye, the eyelid, corner of the eyes, corner of the mouth, pupil, some of the bone structure like the cheekbone and the chin, and so on. So what I'm trying to do right now is just to make indication, make some marks for the landmarks. And I will come back and erase the structure lines that I drew earlier because I drew them very lightly. It's very easy to erase them. So now I only have some of the landmark that I drew left. So the structure lines are all gone, but those are still helpful when I drew them because it helped me to analyze her facial structure. So I don't really have time to go over all the facial structure and stuff. Hopefully in the future I have time to create a portrait painting course. Now that being said, portrait is always a tricky and a challenging subject for me. There are still times that I mess it up. So just fortunately this one works out well. For me anyways, I like how this one turned out. So I just put in a little bit of masking fluid for the highlights on her eyes and the earring. Those are the only highlights, the white of the paper that I need to preserve, because even the light on her skin is actually not that bright compared to the highlight, the reflection in her eyes. So the first wash is just do an overall skin tone on her. And as you can see, first when I put it down is very dark, but because the mixture is quite wet, when it's dry, it gets lighter quite a bit. And another thing you might notice is that I actually didn't stop at the edge of her face. Because her hair is a lot darker than her skin, you can actually just paint it out and have it covered back later. So don't stop right on the edge of her face. You actually want to paint out a little bit more so you can adjust the silhouette later. Now the first wash is dry. I start to paint the second wash and start to define the structure on her face. I start with the eye socket and I also give a little bit of color for her iris. Now even though painting portrait is very different from painting scenery or landscape, the concept of connecting shape is still the same. You don't want to separate everything. When I'm painting the darker part of the eye socket, I want to connect that to other part of her face. So maybe the lower eyelid and here the cheek. And now I use a clean damp brush. I squeeze out the moisture and I soften the edge before it is dry. So I have different variety of hard and soft edges to describe different form of her face. Now I don't soften every single edge because it's going to end up looking too mushy. Some hard edges will help to define the structure a little bit. It's kind of like sculpting. So I connect that shape down to her neck and the front of her chest. So even though I start from the eye and I paint different part of the face, you can see that the shape actually connects it together. So again, even though it's different from painting a landscape, a scenery, the concept of connecting shape is very similar. I give a little bit of darker tone on her hair just to give me a reference how dark I can go. So now I switch to a smaller brush and I start painting her upper eyelid and her iris, places that are a little bit darker. So connecting the dark in her eye socket to her eyebrow. And again, connect the shape. Don't paint the eye completely separate. We are painting a portrait. We are painting a full face. We're not painting individual element on her face because it's going to end up looking cartoonish if we paint the eyes separately, if we paint the nose and mouth all separately. We want them to feel they are all connected, all integrated in the face. So here I paint the bottom face of her nose. Connect that shape, expand that out to her cheek, to her philtrum, and I'm going to start working on her lips. So the same thing, we'll make some hard edges on the upper lips, but the bottom lips, I will soften the edge a little bit so that it will blend naturally into her skin. So here I want to emphasize on her cheek a little bit. Paint some darker tone, a little bit cooler tone under her chin just to create a separation between her face and her neck. And now you can see the form of her face start to take place. You can see the subtle value and lighting changes on her face. It starts to look a little bit three-dimensional. Here I use a little bit of darker color with a little bit of alizarin crimson, trying to get some darker detail on her lips. So the corner of her mouth, the gap between her lips, making it just a little bit darker so that is a little bit more defined. But again, I want to soften some of the edges. I don't want the lips to feel like a cutout. So this is a very delicate stage because the structures are all there. I don't want to do it too much and start to lose the freshness of the face. But there are parts I still want to emphasize a little bit more. So I'm taking a little bit break on the face and I start to paint the hair. I pre-wet the edges because I want her hair to sort of fade into the background. Because it is like a selfie camera, the edge got cut off quite a bit, so I actually need to invent some more shape just so that it doesn't feel very uncomfortably cropped. So the first wash of the hair, I try to stick with the middle value with a little bit different, warm and cool, and I actually try to connect that to her dress. So it's a little bit darker when it's closer to her face, and I want to fade it off to something a little bit lighter. And even though her hair is really dark, this dark brown color, I don't want to make it that dark, at least not the whole way through. So I make it dark right next to her face, just so that we can have the contrast pops out a little bit more. But as it goes to the bottom, I actually want it to fade off a little bit. Plus, I don't think it's really needed to make it really that dark. I want to keep it kind of light and airy. Watercolor is transparent in nature, so I usually don't like to push against that by painting a large opaque area. Now painting her hairline, also pay attention to have a little bit of soft transition from her hair to her skin. So here I start painting the other side of her hair. Try to paint around her earring. But other than that, I keep the hair quite simple. I treat it as a single shape instead of trying to figure out how to paint each and individual hair strand. I think as long as it has good shape with a little bit of details on the edges and give it some nice sense of layering, it will look pretty good. Finishing up the hair, I actually like it quite a bit. So just darken some more areas to have a little bit of difference from her hair to her neck, hinting a little bit of shadow on her chest. And going back to the face, indicate a little bit of her nostril. Don't make the nostril too dark, just a little bit more opaque, a little bit warmer, and that's about it. And coming back, make some more indications. I'm painting the second layer of her dress. It's not the focus of the painting, so as long as I can have a little bit of contrast and bringing out the structure and it looks three-dimensional, we're in business. Some hard edge, some soft edges, and now I'm going back to the face and start to bring out her smile a little bit more by painting the structure of her cheek. Just a little hint, don't make it too dark. I really like her confident smile. And usually like a fashion model always has this sort of unapproachable, when you look at those runway shows, the fashion models always walk like they're angry or something. But when I approach Julia, ask if I can paint her, she actually is really, really friendly and approachable. I actually like that contrast quite a bit. I find that very interesting. So here's the finished painting. I hope you enjoyed that. I really like the result of this painting. I was debating if I should paint any background, but at the end I leave it as is because I actually like how light and airy it feels. I feel very lucky as an artist that I'm able to connect with a lot of people. Many people I might not ever see them face to face, but I still feel very fortunate that through art, through painting, I get to connect with many different people in different parts of the world. And that includes you who is watching this video right now. I hope you well wherever you are. Hope you have a wonderful day. This is Eric from Cafe Watercolor. See you next time.